Svalbard, the largest island in the Spitsbergen archipelago, and at 79 degrees north, one of the northernmost inhabited places on Earth. The interior of the island is a wilderness of glaciers and barren mountains, home only to polar bears and Svalbard reindeer. In the winter, the temperature is often minus 25 degrees Celsius along the coast, and colder inland, but in the summer the Gulf Stream and midnight sun warm the shore to a more reasonable plus 10 degrees, allowing the snow to melt and the tourists to arrive. We landed in Svalbard just before midnight on Friday the 10th of July to do a mixture of amateur radio and sightseeing around the island. Despite its remoteness, the main settlement of Longyearbyen is easy to reach by a direct flight from Oslo. We'd flown to Oslo from London Heathrow only a few hours earlier. Svalbard is administered by Norway, and Longyearbyen is very definitely a Norwegian town. With a year-round population of just over 2,000, it's bigger than you might think. People come from all over the world to study at the university here, and the permafrost outside the town is also home to the global seed vault. I want to mainly concentrate on the tourism, not radio, in this video, but we stayed at the JW5E station on the outskirts of the town, which is available for radio amateurs to operate from. Longyearbyen's heritage is as a coal mining town. The coal here is of an unusually high quality, and that's why people came here from the start of the 20th century. You can see the relics of that past very visibly around the town. Indeed, some of the mines are still active and supply Longyearbyen's power station, the only remaining coal-fired power plant in Norway. In an attempt to be slightly environmentally friendly, the hot water byproduct is piped around town, supplying much-needed heating for free to residents. Today, however, Longyearbyen is a bustling town with a booming tourism industry. Cruise ships stop here, as do people stopping a while longer. There's a supermarket and shopping mall, and with little tax on the island, goods are moderately priced by Scandinavian standards. In the middle of the town stands the giant postbox where all letters to Santa Claus from across the world end up. On the 12th of July we left Longyearbyen in the mist on the first of two excursions, this one to Barentsberg, the main Russian settlement. As signatories to the 1920 Svalbard Treaty, Russia is permitted to mine for coal, just like the Norwegians. Our boat stopped off first at the Esmark Glacier, some 15 kilometers long, where the barbecue was lit for lunch. Barentsberg is a strange place, and I have to say I didn't feel entirely comfortable here. The population today, which had been well over 1,000 in the 1970s, is just 400, most of whom work in the mines. We had some difficulty mooring as our boat became entangled in the ropes of a much larger cargo ship, but we were soon ashore. As we climbed up the steps into the town, it was clear that many of the abandoned buildings around Barentsberg had fallen into a state of disrepair. Despite this, some new buildings have been constructed, including the new consulate, the most northern consulate in the world, and colourful dormitory blocks provided for the workers who operate a cashless society. Part of what made Barentsberg feel strange was not only the statue of Lenin looking out over the town with the banner reading "Our Goal Communism" behind him, but the fact that many of the new buildings seemed far too big for such a small population. This was my first ever taste of Russia, so it might be that I'm not used to it, but I came away with the impression that nobody had told the inhabitants of the collapse of the Soviet Union. 2 days later, we were leaving Longyearbyen again, this time to the ghost town of Pyramiden. The journey up the fjord took a little while, particularly as we went slow to view some of the bird colonies nesting in the cliffs. We were soon making headway, however, past spectacular scenery up Isfjorden as far as the Nordenskjold Glacier, which is even bigger than the Esmark Glacier we had seen previously. The glacier is currently retreating, so we had to keep a reasonable distance as bits break off regularly. As a show for us tourists, the guide fished out a part of the glacier ice from the waters, which he then chopped into ice cubes, with the recommendation that we buy a drink to put them in. Of course, we fell for this ploy. Whilst all this was going on, our boat crew again prepared the barbecue lunch on deck, possibly the coldest barbecue I will ever have, but very welcome after several hours sailing. Pyramiden is located just the other side of the fjord from the glacier, so it didn't take much longer to reach. This is, to all intents and purposes, an abandoned town. Like Barentsberg, this was a Russian mining settlement, but unlike Barentsberg, the mine closed in 1997 and the people left. Today, the buildings lie empty. The cultural centre, which we were allowed to enter briefly, is a time capsule of the Soviet era, with children's paintings on the wall and old films strewn on the floor by an ancient projector. Lenin still surveys his lands overlooking the glacier, but the workers are nowhere. Or, more correctly, there are almost no workers. That was true until 2007, when the Russians faced a stark choice. Under the Svalbard Treaty, a settlement that's abandoned for 10 years has to be removed, with all trace of its existence erased. Facing the cost of dismantling such a large town and cleaning up the associated mine, the Russians decided the cheaper option was to station 2 people there permanently. Today, with the advent of tourism and the reopening of the hotel in Pyramiden, the population has increased to 8. The doors to most of the buildings remain firmly locked, however. It's no wonder they opted for that approach rather than accept the immense challenge of decontaminating such a vast quantity of such spoiled land.